Hello everyone, this is Nachakeno speaking, and fittingly enough for my first real video, I'll be talking about a character from the Overlord series by Maruyama Kugane who just happens to share the part of my name. How could that have happened? Anyways, spoilers for the Overlord series as well as the bonus novel, Vampire Princess of the Lost Country. Of course, I'm talking about Evileye, otherwise known as Keno Fasris Invern. To keep things clear, Evileye is the name we know her by in the mainline story, while Keno Fasris Invern is her original name and the name used for her younger self in the bonus novel timeline. I'm not going to recap every scene Evileye appears in because that would turn this more into a plot summary than a lore video. Instead, I want to focus on who Evileye actually is. Her identity is Keno Fasris Invern, her connection to Inveria, her vampirism, her talent, her power, and why that bonus novel makes her way more interesting than she might seem at first. Because on the surface, Evileye might just seem like another adventurer we meet across the Overlord series. She features heavily in Season 2, and plays a decent-sized role in Season 4. Other than that, we don't know a lot about her just by watching the anime or reading the light novels. But once you look into Keno, the destroyed kingdom of Inveria, and the reason she becomes a vampire in the first place, she becomes one of the most interesting characters, and a fascinating way to explore the new world. So, let's start with the most basic question we can ask. Who is Evileye? Now, in the mainline story, Evileye is introduced as a member of the Blue Roses, an adamantite adventuring party based in the Riestes Kingdom. But that identity is really just her most recent one. Before she was Evileye, before she was a member of the Blue Roses, she was also known as the powerful vampire lord Landfall, only joining Blue Roses after being defeated by a former member. During her time as Landfall, she also became a member of the legendary 13 Heroes. And even before that, she was Keno Fasris Invern, Princess of the Kingdom of Inveria. In the mainline story, a lot of her history is only hinted at. We know Evileye is extremely old, because she was active during the Age of the Demon Gods and the 13 Heroes, and that she used to be Landfall. But the bonus novel gives us a much clearer look at what her original life was like, and what actually happened to her. I believe that everything that happens in the bonus novel regarding Evilleye's backstory is canon, other than her adventures with her skeletal friend. So while the timeline itself is different, the information about Keno, Inveria, and her transformation is still very important for understanding mainline Evileye. So with that in mind, let's talk about Inveria. Inveria is the kingdom Keno came from. It's also the place Blue Roses escapes to at the end of Season 4, which is interesting because it means that Evileye is running back toward the place tied to her original identity. Fun fact, Inverness was a region in the Scottish Highlands during medieval times, and now a city in the UK, which is where I think the name comes from. Well, but in Overlord itself, Inveria matters because it was Keno's homeland. Keno was the daughter of King Invern and Queen Annie Fasris Invern, and she was already a fairly talented magic user before everything went horribly wrong. One morning, an undead transformation curse hit the kingdom. Everyone collapsed in pain. Teleportation spells failed to activate, and by the end of it, the people of the city had been turned into wandering, mindless undead. Except for Keno. In a moment, she loses everyone she has ever known, being relegated to be the last sapient being in her kingdom for many years. Her vampirism and unexpected sapience, despite all others becoming mindless, is directly tied to another one of the stranger mechanics of the New World: talents. See, in Overlord, talents are unique abilities that some people in the New World are born with. Some of them are incredibly minor, like being able to know the exact temperature of water by sticking your finger in it. Others are absurdly powerful, like being able to store and replicate any spell. Keno's talent is the latter. Her talent allows her to store a spell inside herself, and then potentially release it later. In the second that the undead curse was cast over Inveria, Keno's talent automatically stored that spell inside of her. Because of that, the curse did not fully transform her into a mindless zombie like everyone else. Instead, she became a true vampire. But that isn't the end of it. That curse is still stored inside her. If she ever releases it, the curse would finish what it started, and she would become a mindless undead. So Keno survived, but only because the spell that destroyed her kingdom became trapped inside her. And since her talent can only hold one spell at a time, she's basically locked out of using it for anything else. She is one of the most potentially broken talents in the New World, but it is also unusable unless she wants to literally destroy herself. And Evileye being a vampire also explains a lot about her place in the world. She has lived for over 250 years, and because of that, she has connections to eras of the New World that most current players only know as history or legend. She demonstrates this with her knowledge about players. Though she doesn't know exactly what they are, she interprets them as a powerful race of some sort. One of the most interesting things about comparing mainline Evileye and bonus novel Keno is that they are the same person in origin, but they develop very differently. Bonus novel Keno is around level 34 as of present Yggdrasil terms. Mainline Evileye is usually estimated to be somewhere around level 50 as of the present. That difference is important. In the bonus novel timeline, Keno is protected by Suzuki Satoru, who is a manga using his real name. Because of that, she does not have to survive alone in the same way that mainline Evileye presumably did. She still travels, experiences a lot, and grows, but she has someone absurdly powerful protecting her. Mainline Evileye, on the other hand, seems to have had a much harsher path. She lived through centuries of conflict and grew strong enough to grow a reputation as a great vampire lord. Mainline Evileye is stronger because she had to become stronger to survive on her own. Now, talking about Evileye's strength, she is one of the more powerful New World characters that we actually spend a decent amount of time with. She is far above normal adventurers, and even above most Adamantite level adventurers, but she is still nowhere near the top NPCs of Nazarick. That's a pretty big thing with Overlord's power scaling. Evileye is extremely strong by New World levels, in the realm of heroes, but by Nazarick standards, she's about the level of the maids. Her fight with Entoma shows how dangerous she is, although the matchup is not a perfect measurement. Entoma is level 51, but Evileye has the spell Verminbane, developed when she was fighting against the demon gods, which is basically the perfect spell to use against her, rock paper scissors style. So while that fight makes Evileye look very impressive, it's also just kind of a coincidence that she happened to have an anti-insectoid spell on her. Her fight against Yuri Alpha and CZ2128 Delta gives us another comparison point, although it's not perfect because it's a 2-on-1, and New World levels don't line up exactly with the Yggdrasil levels. Yuri is level 51 and Shizu is level 46. Though, of course, levels in Yggdrasil aren't always perfect measures of combat strength, since Yuri has a level in the Cook class, which isn't exactly going to help you punch someone harder. Given all of this, Evileye seems to land around the level 50 in Yggdrasil terms. Again, not exact, but it gives us a decent idea. Her magic also fits her pretty well. She's an elementalist specializing in crystal or earth-type magic. We see things like crystal daggers and walls of crystal, and then more specialized spells like Verminbane. I would highly recommend that every Overlord fan reads first the light novels and then the bonus novel. The bonus novel shows another side of Overlord, and I don't think I would enjoy it much if I hadn't read all of Overlord. You really get to see a different side of Ainz and what he could be, and I think that Keno really provides an opportunity for him to have that experience in the new world, massively contrasting with the main timeline. And of course, Keno is a delight as a character. You get to empathize with her plight and get to watch her grow more confident as the story goes on. As well, the bonus novel reveals so much about the lore of Overlord, the New World, and the reasons behind a lot of questions fans have been asking for years. Methinks I shall make a lore video about all of that soon, as well as the Dragon Lords inhabiting the New World. We'll see. There's also a lot of room to explore Keno and Satoru's adventures in the future if Maruyama ever wants to come back for them, though he seems pretty much done at the moment. The bonus novel ends with the possibility of them encountering Nazarick in that timeline, which I think is an interesting idea, and almost feels cruel to leave it there. A version of Keno who has spent centuries with Satoru, meeting Nazarick after all that time would be incredibly fun to see. Pipe dream? Maybe. But one can hope. At least it could be continued in the realm of fanfiction. There's also still room in the mainline story for Evileye's past to matter again, especially since Blue Rose has escaped toward Enviria. Whether that actually becomes important or not, who knows. We've about 2 volumes left and not a lot of room to get that in. But the fact that Enviria is both her homeland and the places Blue Rose heads to makes it feel like there is at least some possibility of her past becoming relevant again. And if not, then at the very least, the bonus novel gives us enough information to understand why Evileye is such an interesting character. So overall, Evileye is much more than one of the background characters we meet throughout our adventures in the New World. She is the last remnant of a destroyed kingdom, a survivor of an ancient undead catastrophe, a vampire created through her own talent, a former vampire lord known as Landfall, and one of the more interesting links between the main Overlord timeline and the deeper mysteries of the New World. And that brings us to where Evileye's lore currently stands. If you think I should have gone into more detail on certain parts, other parts of Overlord, please let me know. I didn't really go over anything about Evileye from the Mask for the Dead Overlord game, mostly because it's definitely not canon, and I'm still trying to find an accurate way to translate it to English. In any case, please share any advice or criticism, as this is my first lore video and I'm sure there are a lot of improvements to make. Thank you very much for watching to the end of this video, and I hope you have a good rest of your day. This has been Nachakeno, and goodbye.